Life is not simply about chasing pleasure or stoically enduring pain. It is about finding true value in what we experience and living a life of purpose. The Epicureans tell us to seek pleasure, to tune our lives like instruments to maximize enjoyment. But is this enough? The Stoics, on the other hand, emphasize resilience and bearing pain without complaint. But is suffering always necessary? There is a higher purpose, a quest for virtue that transcends both pleasure and pain. It is the music to which our lives are the tuning, the health that determines the right dose of medicine. Virtue is the key. It guides us to find the right balance, to enjoy what enriches our souls and endure what strengthens us. It is the pearl of wisdom that illuminates the path to a meaningful life. So, seek not just pleasure, nor merely endure pain. Seek virtue, let it be your compass, and your life will be a symphony of purpose and fulfillment. Epicureanism tells us how to gain pleasure, Stoicism tells us how to bear pain. But life is not so simple as these systems assume. It is not merely the problem of getting all the pleasure we can, nor of taking pain in such wise that it does not hurt. It is a question of the worth of the things in which we find our pleasure and the relative values of the things we suffer for. Plato squarely attacks that larger problem. He says that the Epicurean is like a musician who tunes his violin as much as he can without breaking the strings. The wise musician, on the contrary, recognizes that the tuning is merely incidental to the music, and that when you have tuned it up to a certain point, it is worse than useless to go on tuning it anymore. Just as the tuning is for the sake of the music, and when you have reached a point where the instrument gives perfect music, you must stop the tuning and begin to play. So when you have brought any particular pleasure, say that of eating, up to a certain point, you must stop eating and begin to live the life for the sake of which you eat. To the Stoic, Plato gives a similar answer. The Stoic, he says, is like a physician who gives his patient all the medicine he can and prides himself on being a better physician than others because he gives his patients bigger doses and more of them. The wise physician gives medicine up to a certain point and then stops. That point is determined by the health which the medicine is given to promote. Precisely so, it is foolish to bear all the pain we can and boast ourselves of our ability to swallow big doses of tribulation and pronounce it good. The wise man will bear pain up to a certain point, and when he reaches that limit, he will stop. What is the point? Where is the limit? Virtue is the point up to which the bearing of pain is good, the limit beyond which the bearing of pain becomes an evil. Virtue, then, is the supreme good, and makes everything that furthers it, whether pleasurable or painful, good. Virtue makes everything that hinders it, whether pleasurable or painful, bad. What, then, is virtue? In what does this priceless pearl consist? We have our two analogies. Virtue is to pleasure what the music is to the tuning of the instrument. Just as the perfection of the music proves the excellence of the tuning, so the perfection of virtue justifies the particular pleasures we enjoy. Virtue stands related to the endurance of pain, as health stands related to the taking of medicine. The perfection of health proves that, however distasteful the medicine may be, it is nevertheless good, and any imperfection of health that may result from either too much or too little medicine shows that in the quantity taken the medicine was bad for us. Precisely so, pain is good for us up to the point where virtue requires it. Below or above that point, pain becomes an evil. Plato spared no pains to disentangle the question of virtue from its complications with rewards and penalties, pleasures and pains. As the virtue of a violin is not in its carving or polish, but in the music it produces, as the virtue of medicine is not in its sweetness or its absence of bitterness, so the virtue of man has primarily nothing to do with rewards and penalties, pleasures or pains. In our study of virtue, he says, we must strip it naked of all rewards, honors, and emoluments. Indeed, we must go farther and even dress it up in the outer habiliments of vice. We must make the virtuous man poor, persecuted, forsaken, unpopular, distrusted, reviled, and condemned. Then we may be able to see what there is in virtue which, in every conceivable circumstance, makes it superior to vice. He makes one of his characters in the Republic complain that no one has ever adequately described either in verse or prose the true essential nature of either righteousness or unrighteousness immanent in the soul, and invisible to any human or divine eye, or shown that of all the things of a man's soul which he has within him, righteousness is the greatest good, and unrighteousness the greatest evil. Therefore, I say, not only prove to us that righteousness is better than unrighteousness, but show what either of them do to the possessors of them, which makes the one to be good and the other evil, whether seen or unseen by gods and men. Accordingly, he attributes to the unrighteous man skill to win a reputation for righteousness, even while acting most unrighteously. He clothes him with power and glory, and fame, and family, and influence, fills his life with delights, surrounds him with friends, cushions him in ease and security. Over against this man who is really unrighteous, but has all the advantages that come from being supposed to be righteous, he sets the man who is really righteous, and clothes him with all the disabilities which come from being supposed to be unrighteous. Let him be scourged and racked, let him have his eyes burnt out, and finally, after suffering every kind of evil, let him be impaled. Then, says Plato, when both have reached the uttermost extreme, the one of righteousness treated shamefully and cruelly, the other of unrighteousness treated honorably and obsequiously, let judgment be given which of them is the happier of the two. Translating the language of the Gorgias and the Republic into modern equivalents, who would we rather be? A man who by successful manipulation of dishonest financial schemes had come to be a millionaire, the mayor of his city, the pillar of the church, the ornament of the best society, the senator from his state, or the ambassador of his country at a European court. Or a man who in consequence of his integrity had won the enmity of evil men in power, and been sent in disgrace to state prison, a man whom no one would speak to, whom his best friends had deserted, whose own children were being brought up to reproach him. Which of the two men would we rather be? And we must not introduce any consideration of reversals hereafter. Supposing that death ends all, and that there is no God to reverse the decisions of men, suppose these two men were to die as they lived, without hope of resurrection, which of the two would we rather be for the next 40 years of our lives? Assuming that after that, there is nothing. Plato in a myth puts the case even more strongly than this. Gyges, a shepherd and servant of the king of Lydia, found a gold ring which had the remarkable property of making its wearer visible when he turned the collar one way, and invisible when he turned it the other way. Being astonished at this, he made several trials of the ring, always with the same result. When he turned the collar inwards, he became invisible, when outwards he reappeared. Perceiving this, he immediately contrived to be chosen messenger to the court, where he no sooner arrived than he seduced the queen, and with her help conspired against the king and slew him, and took the kingdom. Plato asks us what we should do if we had such a ring. We could do anything we pleased, and no one would be the wiser. We could become invisible, out of the reach of external consequences, the instant our deed was done. Would we, with such a ring on our finger, stand fast in righteousness? Could we trust ourselves to wear that ring night and day? Would we feel safe if we knew that our next-door neighbor, even our most intimate friend, had such a ring and could do just what he pleased to us and yet never get caught? Can we tell why a man with such a ring on his finger should not do any unjust, unkind, impure, or dishonorable deed?